What is going on, my unapologetic listeners? We are back with another podcast and we are switching gears, kind of jumping back on the right direction here and focusing on the basics of human genetics. I will tell you, this is my latest class at Harvard through my extension school master's degree program. So I have recently jumped into more of the molecular level of things. So let's jump right in and get started. All right, we are switching gears. Like I said again, we are jumping right back on the positivity train that I'd like to keep our platform on. And we are talking about the great unifier. If you took two genomes from any two humans that are currently on Earth, the result that you'll see is that there's over a 99.9% identical DNA match. That's pretty unifying, if you ask me. A tiny 0.1% fraction accounts for the visible human differences, what we refer to as your phenotypes. Genetics connects humanity far more than it divides us, and it's kind of becoming this hot topic. It's always been a hot topic, especially if we're talking about eugenics, but it's really become more to the forefront on the consumer side of things since we have things like Ancestry and some of those direct to consumer sites and resources. It's really become the forefront of what makes us different. In reality, it's actually what makes us similar. So if you're sitting there asking yourself, Rebecca, what are you even talking about? What are genomes? What is genetic? What are we even talking about? So I wanted to really break this down for somebody who might have zero research or background in this particular field. When we talk about genetics, we're talking about your biological pipeline. The study of heredity is simply decoding this manufactured process. Heredity is talking about what's passed down from parent to offspring. So let's take one step at a time here. DNA is the carrying and the master code of who you are. It's the instruction manual. But you also have these recipes, some genes dictating specific traits, and then processed through the factories, which are your cells, reading and coding for these genes. The workers are then the proteins in the building of the body. Proteins are extremely important when we're talking about genetics, and feel free to do your own dive. I'm not going to really get into the whole of genetics and genomes and their heritability, but I just want to give you a basic overview of the construction and the process that we see here. All right, so moving right along, most of you are probably familiar with the 4-letter code that makes up our DNA here, but I really want to again go over the formula and the structure as we keep moving forward. So DNA is formed into a twisted double helix. There is tons of pictures and models out there for you to study. This is widely known. The entire human body is built using just 4 nucleotide bases. Those are the 4-letter codes that we're talking about here. Those are called nucleotides. That's the A for adenine, T for thymine, C for cytosine, and G for guanine. A and T stick together and C and G stick together. You'll notice that on any diagrams that you pull up in your own research. This specific sequence of letters writes the whole manual for human life. Extremely important, and I am specifically talking about humans here. All right, so we have trillions of these nucleotide pairs that are coiled into our double helix. How the heck does that build the human body? Well, it's packaged then into coding. It's continuously packed and packed and packed. So we can look at this as more of an organizational structure. The DNA itself is tightly packed into our 46 chromosomes. Those are organized strictly into 23 pairs. Inheritance is an equal split. One set is inherited from each parent, from mother and father. The 23rd pair determines your biological sex. You can see that highlighted below in our little picture there. And that'll come into play more as we keep moving on. So you may be asking yourself, all right, Rebecca, that's really cool, but how does this all work together? Why is this important for me to know the structure of how our genes are organized? Well, let me explain a little bit further. Your genes are highly specific segments of DNA that are then coded into proteins. That's extremely important. We're coded similar to how a computer is coded. So we're really talking about our programming here. No single gene works alone. Everything is talking to each other. or might not be talking to each other. That comes into play when we talk about certain diseases. Humans possess roughly 20,000 protein coding genes. Imagine how much continuous coding is going on in your body. Most physical traits result from a complex gene combination interacting with the environment. So now you've had all this layered coding that's now telling your body what to do and how to look on top of your environmental factors. So you kind of have this cumulus of programming that's making you you. Now, if you've been following my platform or you're personal friends with me, you know how much I love evolution. I love studying this specific area of being human. And that kind of brings us to mutations of our genes, which is the engine of evolution. What is changing? Defining mutations as the natural engine of evolution gives us the variation that we see across humanity and across time. So we have neutral, we have things, vast majority of mutations that we don't even know is happening are hidden typos within our code. They show no physical effect, no harm to us whatsoever. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing. But you also have some of these more harmful, detrimental changes in our code. Now, these are often weeded out over time with natural selection and those environmental factors coming into play. But you also have the beneficial mutations as well, some of those rare survival advantages. This is the primary driver of evolutionary variation across our specific species, and we'll talk about maybe some of those examples in a little bit. Alrighty, so if you've been following my platform or you know me personally, you know I love talking about evolution and specifically some of these external factors that I mentioned, especially having to do with geography. I love human migration. I think it's one of the key factors to our human story. But I wanted to kind of relate this to evolution and our genes. So human diversity is driven by recombination, that recoding, mutation, and natural selection. You have all these different factors acting upon our species. Traits like skin color, hair texture are localized survival adaptations. You know, if you live in the north versus you live right at the equator, you're going to have some variation there. Same with your skill set, not just about the way that you look, but also about how you survive. Different environments are going to require different skill sets. An example of that is darker pigmentation. It does protect against UV radiation, and we do see some of those darker features near the equator where the UV radiation is strong versus at the poles of our Earth. So these traits are evolutionary tools. They do not indicate one being more superior over the other. It's just simple biological variation, similar to, let's take foxes, for example. You have white fox that burrow in the snow, and then you have maybe some more forest fox that are red or some different colors that help blend in with their environment. The same thing applies to humans. We can't forget that we are a part of nature. We are not superior or separate in any manner, but we're a part of nature, and we have to look to some of these geographic adaptations as well. Let's keep moving along. And speaking of things being superior, the whole myth of there being this superior biological race is just nonsense. Let's just put it there. It's absolutely nonsense. Modern genetics definitely shatters that concept of a true biological race. It doesn't exist. It never existed. If you're questioning me, please go back and look at what makes us human, my last two episodes of our podcast here, because I'm going to get into the different types of humans that were all living on the earth all at the same time. So there's not one, boom, we started and this is how we were. No, 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 no. Our DNA proves that humans are overwhelmingly similar across our species. If you look to the left here, you can see, remember, we have 99.9% genetic similarity. That little itty bitty 0.1% is genetic variation. That's why I don't have elf ears and you have webbed feet. It's variation amongst our species. That might be why I have blonde hair and you have brown hair, and I have green eyes and you have blue eyes, and my nails grow faster than your nails do, or whatever those phenotypes may be. Crucial findings though, most genetic variation occurs within populations, not between them. That is crucial. If you look back in history and some of those historical mishaps, some of those bad times in our human history, this point of us really having the variation within ourselves and not between what seems to be different really can kind of count out everybody's argument of why one race might be better than another, because you don't account for the own mutations happening within that population. You're only looking on the outside. So it really starts within. Superficial physical differences do not equal deep biological division. That's that variation. But on the genetic coding, we're all still the same computer. We're all still programmed the same way. It's not like Mac to Apple. It's all the same Apple coding, just with humans. If that makes sense, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And remember, I just talked about this. This is my reminder to go watch the human migration episode. Here is your family tree. Here it is. We're all connected. Every human alive shares a deep common ancestry. And let me say that one more time in case you weren't listening. Every human alive today shares a deep common ancestry. If that doesn't unify us, I don't know what else could possibly bring us together other than we're the 99.9% the same. Early migration out of Africa created population bottlenecks. Gene flow constantly mixed populations over millennia, and every person's DNA reflects this ancient shared human journey. We're social. We like to move. Of course we were going to interbreed and intermingle. This makes perfect sense to me, but I'd love to know your thoughts. Let's keep moving. Now you may be thinking to yourself, okay, Rebecca, I have all these environmental factors and I have genetics. Which one do I listen to? And the answer is both. You are human. One does not supersede the other. We are a combination of both, and this really jives certain people. But I wanna make a point here. Your genetic predisposal to do something or to be something is not your destiny. You do have free will. You do have choice. Biology and culture work in tandem together. You have the total ability to change both your biology and your culture, especially as you age. Really interesting research on changing your biology and recoding yourself. If you want to dive deep into that, I have not yet, but I implore you to do so. So let's take both sides of this here, right? We have the biology, we have the blueprint, provides raw material and potential, establishes a baseline of physical traits and what you are predisposed for. Now, on the flip side here, you have the culture, the architect. That's your nutrition, your education, your culture, your lifestyle. When archaeologists go to dig someone up that lives 2,000 years ago, we're not just looking at how they died or how they're buried. We're running bone marrow samples to see their nutrition. We're looking at how dense their bones may be. Maybe they were a laborer. Maybe they were not in an area that had educational resources. Really taking a look at their lifestyle, because that is a half of the makeup here. You don't want to miss half the person. And also, our culture determines how and if genetic potential is realized, if you've acted on some of those predisposed tendencies or not. Make sense? Let's keep going. I do like to have extra visuals when we're talking about things that are on the molecular level or things that are maybe a large theory to download into your brain. So I like to provide plenty of visuals, starting with, again, our 99.9% identical. That's between our species. We do see a variation depending on the species of chimpanzees between 98 and 99 shared DNA. That's like your human cousin. It's basically the same. You do have 2 meters of DNA per cell. Think about how many little itty bitty cells are constantly being birthed and died within your body. You have 2 meters of DNA per cell. That is extensive. And then, of course, you have 3 million base pairs within the human genome. So you have the programming, not to sound too cheesy, but you have the programming and the capability to basically redefine your own destiny based off of your biology. That's how wonderful being human is, and our free will and all of our choices. So you have all the predisposition built into your hardwiring already. It's up to you to create that culture and that impact that determines who you'll actually become. I know this episode was a little bit longer than my usual and it was a little bit heavy, but I really wanted to reflect not only on my education, but things that I'm finding important along my journey, especially as I'm going through my graduate studies, and some of these things that I feel like we should all really know, including that we are really one human family. We're not making that up. When scientists say that, we're not trying to propaganda you into doing something. It is true. Genetics tell a story of connection, not separation. Human diversity reflects the ultimate success of our species. We have 9 billion different people on the planet. It is the greatest success story that Hollywood could never write. So that is it for today. I know we talked about a lot, but I'm really looking forward to your discussions. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to share, comment, like, subscribe. And until the next episode, episode 10, stay curious and unapologetic, and I will see you then.